And we welcome the ISKCON Newtown, we welcome Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There's many other special holy places in Kolkata that we invite Prabhu that whenever he's traveling to Maya, we kindly spend some time in Newtown, and we'd be very inspired by his association. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your kind words and for your kind invitation. I heard Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj was here yesterday, so it's difficult to follow in his footsteps. He's a very wonderful speaker. We worked together many years in Bangladesh, Malaysia and Thailand, and in England also. Anyway, I'll try to say a few words. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 38. Avidyamano pyavabhatihi dvayo Jaturdhiya svapna manorato yata Tat karma sankalpa vikalpa kammano Buddho nirundya tabayam tatasya. It's a very long purport here today. If you don't mind, I'll just jump to the translation. Although here, what is it? Kavi Maharaj speaking, is it? To Vasudev, to Narad Muni? No, sorry, who's speaking here? Nimi. Kavi to Maharaj Nimi, okay. Kavi to Maharaj Nimi. Although the duality of the material world does not ultimately exist, the conditioned soul experiences it as real under the influence of his own conditioned intelligence. This imaginary experience of a world separate from Krishna can be compared to the acts of dreaming and desiring. When the conditioned soul dreams at night of something desirable or horrible, or when he daydreams of what he would like to have or avoid, he creates a reality that has no existence beyond his own imagination. Maybe turn this fan off, is it possible? The tendency of the mind is to accept and reject various activities based on sense gratification. Therefore, an intelligent person should control the mind, restricting it from the illusion of seeing things separate from Krishna. And when the mind is thus controlled, he will experience actual fearlessness. Purport: although the conditioned soul is bewildered, you turn it down, the amplifier slightly. It's Although the conditioned soul is bewildered by the objects of sense gratification offered by Maya, illusion, if one takes to the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord, such material sense gratification gradually dissipates, for it's merely a mental concoction of the conditioned soul. Srila Sridhar Swami has emphasized by the words Avyabhicharini Bhakti that one cannot dissipate the illusion of material sense gratification unless one takes to the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. As Rupa Goswami has stated, Anya Bilasita Sunyam Jnana Karmadyanavritam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti Rutama Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1111. Unalloyed devotional service cannot be mixed with material sense gratification or mental speculation. The servant must act only for the satisfaction of the master. Similarly, Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, Mame Kam Sharanam Braja. One must see only Krishna everywhere and must act exclusively for the satisfaction of Lord Krishna, the eternal master of every living entity. Srila Madhavacharya has quoted several verses from the Harivamsa, illustrating that the living entity, bewildered by identifying with his material body, home, family, friends, and so on, and thus entangled in the cycle of birth and death, accepts phantasmagoria as reality. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Shravana Kirtanadi Lakshana Matratvam Yato Na Vyahanyeta. If one seriously desires to vanquish the duality of material illusion, one must adopt the process of chanting and hearing the glories of the Supreme Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cited the following Vedic reference. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, kalona steva nasteva nasteva gatir anyata, Brihan Nadadiya Purana. According to Vedic literatures, the living entities of this Kali Yuga are very feeble in their power to understand spiritual knowledge. Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagya Hupadruta. Where's that from?
Bhagavatam.
Yes, where in the Bhagavatam?
First canto.
Where in the first canto then? Chapter 1? Chapter 10 or chapter 11?
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2?
Verse 10 or something.
Is it correct? Check, please. Their minds are always disturbed and they're lazy and misguided by so many bogus leaders. Chapter 1 or chapter 2? It's definitely chapter 2, is it? What's the full verse? Prayanalpaso. Speak up. Can't understand. Okay, thank you. Their minds are always disturbed and they're lazy and misguided by so many bogus leaders. They are further described in the Bhagavatam as
1:10.
Yeah, see, chapter 1. Ni Satwan, impatient and pious. Durmedhan, possessed of weak intelligence, and Ratsitayusa, very short-lived. Therefore, one who seriously wants to overcome the ignorance of material life must surrender to the process of chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as well as reciting and rendering submissive oral reception to the transcendental literatures presented by the Lord, such as Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. It should be understood that the living entity is completely spiritual and never actually becomes mixed with material energy. Ashango Hyayam Purusha, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, Tasmin Shuddhe Pikalpyate, although the living entity is Shuddha, pure spirit soul, he imagines that he is a material creation and thus entangles himself in the network of illusion called Dehapatya Kalatradi. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has used the word Manasa Pratyaksha to describe the experience of material life. Manasa Pratyaksha means that which is experienced only within the mind. The actual Pratyaksha described in Bhagavad Gita 9.2. Okay, what's that? One of the boys here at the back. 9.2 Bhagavad Gita. Without looking at your phone. Yes, please. Okay, translation.
This knowledge is the king of education.
Oh, someone else. Yes, please, over there. Okay, Atul, you say. Some mixed up here a little bit. Okay, more or less. Say again, please.
Because it is direct perception of the self-realization, it is the perfection of religion and joyfully performed.
It is everlasting and it is joyfully. Okay. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitramidamuttamam Prajaksavagamam Dharmyam Shushukam Kartamavyayam. When one submissively hears the instructions given by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, which constitute the king of all knowledge, Rajavidya, and the most confidential of all information, Rajaguyam, by associating with such spotless spiritual knowledge, Pavitramidamuttamam, one can directly experience one's eternal nature, Prajaksavagamam. By experiencing one's eternal nature, one becomes thoroughly religious, dharmyam, blissful, shushukam, and eternally engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, kartam avyayam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has quoted the following Shruti mantra in this connection: Vijita Rishika Vayubir Adanta Manas Turagam. By the very senses and life air, one has conquered the uncurbed mind will again drag one away. Okay, I repeat that. By the very senses and life air. I'll put out that one has conquered. The uncurbed mind will again drag one away. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that's all right, just continue. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the meaning of this verse is Sama Vahaya Gurus Charanam. If one rejects the lotus feet of one's spiritual master, all of one's previous spiritual advancement becomes null and void. This has already been indicated in the previous verse by the words Guru Devat Atma. Unless one accepts a bona fide spiritual master in the authorized parampara as one's worshipable deity and life and soul, there is no question of overcoming the duality of material life. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has made the following comments on this verse. Control of the mind is a result of living a life of devotional service of the Lord. By the influence of fixed devotional service, the accepting and rejecting mind can stop its thirst for sensory enjoyment apart from Krishna. In transcendental Krishna consciousness, there is no contradiction, pettiness, or lack of ecstasy. In other words, it is not like a material object, which always proves temporary. Parts of the supreme shelter, Krishna, and have fallen from Krishna's kingdom of spiritual pastimes. Because of forgetting the Supreme Lord, they become prone to sinful life and turn their attention to dangerous material objects, which fill them with constant fear. If one desires to subdue the mind, which is constantly engaged in the duality of mental concoction, one must take to the devotional service of the Lord. Again, the verse, Avidyamano pi avabhati hidvayo Dhyatur tiya svapna manorato yata tat karma sankalpa vikalpakang mano buddho nirundyat abhayang tatasyat. So Kavi Maharaj, speaking to Nimi, the great king Nimi, although the duality of the material world does not ultimately exist, the conditioned soul experiences it as real under the influence of his own conditioned intelligence. This imaginary experience of a world separate from Krishna can be compared to the acts of dreaming and desiring. When the conditioned soul dreams at night of something desirable or horrible, or when he daydreams of what he would like to have or avoid, he creates a reality that has no existence beyond his own imagination. The tendency of the mind is to accept and reject various activities based on sense gratification. Therefore, an intelligent person should control the mind, restricting it from the illusion of seeing things separate from Krishna. And when the mind is thus controlled, he will experience actual fearlessness. So here, Kavi is responding to the inquiries of Nimi Maharaj. He inquired, please speak about how one engages in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. If you consider me capable of properly hearing these topics, when a living entity offers loving service to the Supreme Lord, the Lord is immediately satisfied, and in return, he will give his own self to the surrendered soul. So this is the essential topic of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna Bhakti, devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which is the eternal constitutional position of the living entities. But somehow or other, we have fallen, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, somehow or other, we have fallen to the ocean of birth and death. Sometimes there's debate as to, did the soul ever reside in the spiritual world? Some say came from Brahman. Some say was always in the material world. But the general understanding taught by Srila Prabhupada is that he has fallen. And in this purport also the same thing is that once we are a Krishna, but we have fallen. Here it says, the living entities are fragmental parts of the Supreme Shelter Krishna, but have fallen from Krishna's kingdom of spiritual activities. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that somehow or other we have fallen into this material world. So Prabhupada gave an example of crow and tal fruit logic in order to illustrate the futility of trying to figure out exactly how it happened. We should rather be satisfied with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement, somehow or other we have fallen. The crow and tal fruit logic, of course, some men were sitting on a park bench. Yesterday we had a nice walk in the Rabindra Sarovar Park. They were debating. The crow came and it landed on the branch, and the tal fruit simultaneously fell. So they were debating, what caused the tal fruit to fall? Was it the, force of the crow landing on a branch? Or someone said, no, it was just ripened time. So that was the right time to fall. And someone else said, there was a bit of a breeze blowing and it blew the... Anyway, there was no conclusion. So Prabhupada advised there's no point, in boggling the mind over all these, this particular issue anyway. We are here, and our tendency is to forget Krishna here. It says here, because of forgetting the Supreme Lord, they become prone to sinful life and turn their attention to what? What do they turn their attention to? Please, one of you. What do they turn their attention to? It's not easy to concentrate in class. Mind is... Hare Krishna. Shishinatte Garanga Ki Jai. All of us, including the speaker as well, You forget what we said in the sentence before. But anyway, here it says that they become prone, because of forgetting the Supreme Lord, they become prone to sinful life and turn their attention to dangerous material objects, which fill them with constant fear. So yes, so much energy is spent on making arrangements for comfortable living in the material world, accumulating assets, money, land, properties, and we get property, filling them up with so many kinds of paraphernalia, beautiful furnishings, and etc., etc. Then attachment becomes very strong. It's very difficult later in life to reduce the attachment. The house becomes filled with so much paraphernalia, and of course offspring, and offspring of the offspring. So it's all very complex. But in Krishna consciousness, one is taught to keep one's attention focused on Krishna and glorifying Krishna by chanting His holy names and hearing His glories by worshipping Him, just like here we see beautiful worship of the deities and so many ISKCON temples all over the world. The purpose is to cultivate and develop Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti. So somebody may be wealthy, but if he's in Krishna conscious, if he knows how to use it in his wealth in Krishna service, then it's quite all right. Someone else may be a poor person, but if he's Krishna conscious, then he's not troubled. Satul Krishna was telling me he was in Ketari Dam in Bangladesh. It's the birthplace of Narottam Das Thakur. Now he said ISKCON has developed a nice project there. But he was mentioning how the people in the local area, they're just walking around barefoot, no shoes even, simple farmers. So they're accustomed to living a very simple life. We are not able to do like that. We're accustomed to flying in airplanes, driving in motor cars, and air conditioners, and so on and so forth. We have to try not to be bewildered by all these things, but to keep focused in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada himself showed, Prabhupada himself also, you could say, lived, in opulence. He was able to fly first class around the world. Of course, in the beginning, he didn't live like that. He was able to live in a very simple way in Sri Vrindavan Dham. He only had an old bicycle, you know, that made a funny noise because it was damaged, and one or two sets of cloth like that, and lived simply there in Radha Damodar temple. But later he had, you know, you could say kingly opulence. The Prabhu said, I went to America with 40 rupees, now I have 40 crore. And so many fathers and mothers all over the world. As his disciples, he was, because disciples were taking care of him nicely, so he was likening them to fathers and mothers. And palatial properties, nice quarters. He wasn't particularly, you know, affected by that. But he used everything in Krishna's service. I mean, like, for example, we mentioned Bhaktivedanta Manor. When Prabhupada first came to Bhaktivedanta Manor, actually came by helicopter, you know. Our Shamsundar Prabhu has written some nice books, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. You've read this? 3 books, very interesting books. He has a very flowing writing style, something like in the vein of James Joyce, if you've ever heard, a famous Irish writer. He wrote a famous book called Ulysses, but it's called Flow of Consciousness. Shamsundar, when he was our GBC, but he didn't, you know, give much attention to those duties because he was traveling with Prabhupada. But he used to write letters to us in the UK about his travels, and they were all in that, you know, flow of consciousness style. So long, interesting letters about Srila Prabhupada. And he would do, you know, very bold things. You know, that those books detail how he, you know, his wife Malati found the Jagannath deity in an Indian store. Can this turn down a bit?
Yes.
Yeah, sort of blow. The others can stay on. Maybe this is quite strong. She found the deity of Jagannath in the shop. This is San Francisco, I think 1967, and brought to Prabhupada. And he asked, are there any more? And she brought Baladev and Subhadra, and Prabhupada bowed down to them, and he asked Shamsundar to make big deities. And then after that, asked him to organize a Rath Yatra. And then Shamsundar was thinking, if we could meet the Beatles, you know, it would be very powerful, because, you know, they had spiritual inclination, and they were very influential in the Western world in those days among the young people. So, you know, with other Grihastha couples and with the blessings of Prabhupada, they went to London, and then they wanted to were trying again and again to meet the Beatles. The Beatles had a company called Apple. This is different from Apple Computers, but their company for producing records and so forth were called Apple. So the devotees used to bring different apple preparations to their office, and they would, you know, feeding all the workers there, and, you know, in the hope the Beatles would also get some, which I think they did. And then at one stage, Shamsundar went to meet some Hell's Angels came from America, and you know, he knew them, and they came to the temple asking for help. And then they had a simple temple then, a rented place. They had Jagannath there also. Then One day the Hells Angels went to try to meet the Beatles, and Samsundar also went there. There were many people in the room. Ken Kesey, who was a famous proponent of LSD, and others, they were all waiting there, hoping to meet the Beatles. And a George happened to come into the room to pass through, and he saw Samsundar, and immediately he was in his, dowdy, shaved head, and immediately he invited Samsundar into his office, and he said, "I've been waiting to meet you for a long time." And as it turned out, he'd actually gone to the devotees had some kind of a regular kirtan in some underground place, and he had gone there incognito, I think it was in the basement of the International Times. International Times was a kind of hippie newspaper. So they had kirtan periodically, I think, in the basement, and he came there in disguise and joined the kirtan. Nobody knew. Anyway, then, he was very happy to meet Samson. He invited him to his home, and then they had kirtan over there. The devotees brought prasadam, and George had an organ, and he was playing, and then he decided to make a record, and they recorded Hare Krishna mantra, which is where many of us heard Hare Krishna for the first time. And it became a hit. And they were a group called Radha Krishna Temple. They also made an album called Radha Krishna Temple, including Govindam, Adipurasham, and Samsara Davanal, Lida Loka, and Bhajamana Hooray, as Yamuna sang it, not Bhaja Hooray Mana, but that's all right. Prabhupada loved the record, he thought it was very nice. But the devotees became quite famous, and they were having engagements in different parts of Europe. They would fly to different places, and they would perform kirtan in big festivals and various venues, get some payment for it as well, from which they could buy a vehicle. And they were also on Top of the Pops in the UK. In the 60s, there was a television program, Top of the Pops, in which all these groups would perform, the Beatles, and this was called the Mersey Beat, because they all came from Liverpool, which is a industrial city and port on the west coast of England. So devotees also invited to perform, but they had those days, fashionable attire for young ladies was the miniskirt. So generally when these groups were performing, they'd have these girls gyrating, dancing at the side in their miniskirts. So the devotees refused, "No, we're not going to perform here." So it was just about to start that segment on the TV. And then one of the Maharajis, I think, came up with the idea, get some cloth, long cloth, and they wrapped it around these girls like saris. And then they performed the Hare Krishna mantra. Anyway, this greatly popularized, Krishna consciousness. It had a tremendous effect. Prabhupada, this saying, chasing rhinos, is something, Prabhupada encouraged devotees, try to do something big, like you're trying to do here, which is very nice. He encouraged like that, to try to do something that's like trying to chase a rhino or capture a rhino, hunt a rhino. if you don't succeed, people will say, never mind, it's impossible anyway, practically impossible. But if you succeed, oh yes, this is a great accomplishment. So Prabhupada encouraged, so like meeting the Beatles and inspiring them to, make a record of the Hare Krishna mantra, and as a result, getting on TV and performing all over Europe. I mean, this was capturing a rhino for sure. So yes, later, and Prabhupada came in, 71, Atul Krishna mentioned, I joined ISKCON in 1971. Srila Prabhupada came to London that year. I had been I saw the devotees on Harinam. Mandakini Mataji, actually, she tells a story that she was a pujari. She rarely went on Sankirtan. But one day she just happened to go out on Sankirtan, and she happened to meet me. I mean, I saw the Harinam, and I was watching, very fascinated, and she came up and sold me a magazine. And when she went back to the temple, Prabhupada saw her out of the window. She was coming in, and he invited her in to his room and thanked her. He said, "Thank you very much." She said she went on Sankirtan and sold a few magazines. "Thank you so much," he said. But I had gone then for a couple of weeks to Canada, and on the way back I stopped in New York. I saw a huge Harinam party, about 60 devotees. And again someone came and sold me a magazine. And he invited me to the temple. I said, "I can't, I'm going to London tonight." He said, "It's all right, there's a temple in London. The address is in the magazine." So after a couple of days, I went to the temple, and I was standing outside just looking. And then a devotee invited me in. He gave me prasadam. And after prasadam, it's time for Harinam. Okay, I went out with him on Harinam, all the way along Oxford Street, all the way back, 3 hours. I used to hate Oxford Street. I was a person who liked to live in secluded places in the country. So Oxford Street, very noisy, like Calcutta. Anyway, I felt comfortable being a Harinam. And then when I came back, the devotee said, "Stay for some time. The spiritual master will be speaking this evening." Okay, I stayed on. Because actually when I was in Canada, I found the Bhagavad Gita in my friend's apartment. Bhagavad Gita as it is. He never read it, but I took it with me, and I was so interested to read it. I'd read Gita before, some other edition, but it just seemed like a long poem, but I was very interested to read Bhagavad Gita as it is. Actually, a main message I got from reading that first reading was that if you want to make progress in spiritual life, you have to find a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter. And the same point is being made here. Unless one accepts a bona fide spiritual master in the authorized parampara as one's worshipful deity in life and soul, there's no question of overcoming the duality of material life. So anyhow, I was very interested to listen, and the atmosphere in the temple also, the whole mood among the devotees, it was a very high-powered, surcharged with spiritual energy. Everything was very clean. I was already a vegetarian for a couple of years. But sometimes, if you're not with vegetarian friends, then others they'll invite you, come and eat with us. You don't feel like it if you're a vegetarian, so you become a bit antisocial in a way. Because eating together, it's a very important aspect of life, among people in general. So Armenians, they're always, everybody I suppose, in different countries. So to be able to be among persons who were all vegetarians, this is very nice, very attractive, and the prasadam was very tasty. So I felt very comfortable there in the temple. Then Prabhupada came, into the temple room. All the devotees bowed down. He was very effulgent, small of stature, similar to Subhag Swami in his stature. When we had dramas, he was joined in London also. Subhag Maharaj was a devotee in the temple when I joined. So when we had dramas, he would always play Srila Prabhupada. If we had drama also including Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, then Janananda Maharaj would play. I don't know if you know Janananda Maharaj. He would play Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, very grave, thin, tall, grave. Anyhow, then Prabhupada came in and delivered a lecture, got on a big Vyasa at the back of the temple, and delivered very serious lecture, very serious. He had those horn-rimmed glasses for reading like that, and quoting many Sanskrit slokas. So my impression and understanding was, here's a bona fide spiritual master. And this is the opportunity to take shelter. So I was just after the lecture, hanging around the temple, even climbed up stairs to the first floor landing, and some Mataji came and said, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" It was actually Prabhupada's room. I almost opened the door and I did. Anyway, the temple commander came and said, "Go home now." He said, "Come back in a few days. Krishna will take care of you." He came back in a few days and again heard Prabhupada give lecture on the Sunday feast, and deep impression created. So after the lecture, devotees invited me, "Please join the temple." So I was ready to join. I'd spent a few years traveling around here and there in Middle East, North Africa, various places. And I had a bit of attraction to Oriental culture, because those countries had a much more simple lifestyle than Western European countries. In fact, in Morocco, they used to have these Berbers. They would beat their drums, taka, taka, taka. They had the long flowing robes. They also had sikas. I used to watch them. I was very fascinated. When I saw Harinam parties, it looked like the same, long flowing robes, beating on drums, sikas. So it was something that attracted me to the devotees. Anyhow, I was ready. I had enough of, wandering around and, not really accomplishing anything of use. So I could see the devotees very one-pointed, fired up, fixed up, fired up. So, and Prabhupada, was the inspiration and the guide. So it was automatic for me to join the temple. And next day, they just said, "You have to shave your head." So next morning, I got my head shaved. And as Atul mentioned, there was a devotee taking care of me called Kulashekar. He was the first English devotee who joined when the Samsundar and company came. So he shaved me up, and he was going to open a new temple, a new preaching center. So he asked me to go with him. So the temple president gave approval. So it's about 4 days in the temple. And before going, went to Prabhupada's room to get his blessing. So he's very pleased to hear we were going to open a new center. He said, very nice, bright-faced brahmacharis. Then he gave his garland to us as a blessing, and we went off. Actually, we didn't go to Wales right away. We went to Bristol. We had a contact there who was interested. We were staying in his apartment. His father came and he was furious. We had to lock ourselves in a room. He was trying to break the door down. So we decided we'd move on to Cardiff in Wales, which is not far away. And there we also had contacts, because the devotees used to go to these big rock music festivals and do kirtan, distribute prasadam, and they would get contacts of interested persons. So we had these contacts, and we stayed in the apartments of these. They were hippies, but they were interested in Krishna consciousness. So we were living there, and actually there was another devotee with us. But one day he came and into the room. He said, "Everything's blue," and what's he talking about? Krishna is everywhere. Everything's blue. It turned out he took some LSD, which is a very strong drug, commonly taken by young people at the time, and one goes off into another sphere, as it were. These persons like Allen Ginsberg, they were proponents of LSD. Our center in the devotee center in Haight-Ashbury, it was in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, so it's all hippies there. They're all stoned out on LSD and hashish and whatever else. And so they go on these what we call acid trips. LSD is called acid. Generally, that was the slang name for acid. To drop some acid, you get a tab of acid and drop it, and then after about half an hour, you go on this trip, exploring the cosmos, as it were. So he recommended the temple as a very suitable place for re-entering, the Earth's atmosphere after an acid trip. It's just a very good place to come down to Earth again with kirtan and prasadam and the warm association of the devotees. So anyhow, he took some LSD, and then he just wandered off. I don't know where he went. We didn't see him again. So it was just me and Kula Shekhar, and living in these hippies' apartments. But it was a very good experience for me, even though I was a new bhakta, because Kula Shekhar, he was expert at everything. He was a good mridanga player. He sang nice kirtan. He was a very good cook. He gave nice lectures. He knew how to do puja nicely. So, I had to learn all these things, within the first few weeks. How to play mridanga, etc., how to cook, everything. And we were living like that in their apartment, maybe 3-4 weeks, and a very good crop of devotees. Really good crop of devotees joined. They all became leaders. Not everybody, but many of them became leaders. Some of you might know Gunarnava, who was president of Vrindavan for a long time. He's a Welsh devotee. I remember we saw him first on Harinam. He had a big curly blonde hair, and he saw us from the other side of the street and, raised his arms up like this. So, he already seen the devotees some, I guess. And so he joined very quickly. It wasn't his apartment we were staying in. The Vichitravirya, who became president of the manor under Jaitirtha, who was a very good leader. He was regional secretary of UK for quite a while. Bhajahari, who was also president of London Temple and the manor also. a very good proponent of Harinam. They've both departed in the world now. Narahari Das, who Aussie devotees know well, he went with me to open the first temple in Ireland. And after I got called back to London, then he was the temple president of Dublin for a long time. Now lives in Melbourne with his good wife. They're both very nice devotees. And anyway, those are some of the devotees who joined. Very good quality. Anyhow, we're just talking about Shyam Sundar, you know. So Prabhupada, he came back to London again in 72 and spent most of the summer there. He went briefly to Amsterdam to install a deities of Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladevi. The devotees, they didn't know anything hardly. And they set up the fire yagya, no fruits. Prabhupada said, "Where are the fruits?" Oh, the devotees said, "We'll bring," and they ran away and came back with a big bowl of fruit salad, you know. Prabhupada got furious. What is this? You know, whole fruits, you know, they have to be placed around the yagya shala. So that's how much the devotees knew. But it was nice in London. By that time I was initiated in Paris because I could speak French. I was sent to Paris for a while, and I became the cook in Paris temple and used to cook and take. The devotees went on Harinam all day, and I would bring the prasadam on the metro, and then we'd take prasadam in a park or church and continue with the Harinam. But anyway, came back to London. I was asked to manage a book distribution party. It was the first book distribution party in the UK. And yes, it was a quite successful party. Mahavishnu, now Swami, he joined it, and Janananda, who became now Maharaj, preaching in France, and a devotee called Vrajendra Kumar, who became Bhakti Vrajendrananda, and Swami is our Malaysia Maharaj, as everyone knows him, also departed now. And Subhag Maharaj sometime came out with us, so, it was a nice party. So anyhow, Prabhupada came to London, and it was a nice opportunity. Our Sankirtan van was the best vehicle. Temple didn't have many vehicles. It only had one old car and this nice van. So Prabhupada, I often got opportunity to drive him on the morning walks, and he would sit in the front seat, and he would often chant the Shikshastakam very quietly, or just chant japa. And lots of devotees could get in the back, So we would go to Regent's Park, Hyde Park. Prabhupada liked those parks very much. He would walk for about an hour, chant, or sometimes he would talk a little with devotees. Once in a Regent's Park, a devotee was trying to, Prabhupada asked for some twigs from a tree. He cleaned his teeth with twig. He didn't like to use a toothbrush. But no neem twigs, they're available in England, so they would take from ash tree. And as the devotee was taking the twigs, the park warden said, "Stop, don't steal twigs." And Prabhupada said, "These Britishers stole so many treasures from India. They don't even let us take a few twigs from a tree." I remember another morning we were walking in the Hyde Park, and of course a lot of devotees, so all chanting japa, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, so it makes quite a lot of noise. Some bum, hobo was sleeping on the park bench. He just woke him up, this loud noise. What's that? Who's disturbing me? But, Prabhupada looked at him, he said, "Good morning," very politely. And then he said, "Good morning, sir." So Prabhupada had that effect on people, very, very peaceful and saintly personality. So anyway, London Temple was packed up. It was it's actually 6-story building, but very narrow. Devotees had come from Europe. They were sleeping everywhere, in the attic, in the prasadam room, on the stairs even. So Prabhupada, he saw we need a new temple. So he asked Shamsundar to ask George Harrison to help get a new temple. Usually George didn't like to ask. Some say he didn't like to ask George. He would just, be friendly with him, bring prasadam, and give him association. But since Prabhupada, requested him, first time I think was for the Krishna book, and he asked, and George was very happy to sponsor. So this time he had to ask George for a new building. So he was hesitant, but still, because Prabhupada asked him, he did it, and George agreed. And during the winter of 72-73, the temple president, Dhananjaya, and George, they searched many places until they found the manor house called Pigott's Manor, just outside London, near Watford. But it's that northwest side of London has a lot of Hindu people there. Harrow, Wembley, those are big areas of Hindu people. So it's very close to the manor, so it turned out to be a very good location in that respect. So he got they decided to buy it, Prabhupada gave his approval, they bought it, and I think they completed the purchase about April 73. And Prabhupada wanted to come and see it. In May 73, he came. So getting the manor was another rhino, and but to renovate it and so forth, that was another matter. But anyway, Shamsundar liked to do big things, so he hired a helicopter to bring Prabhupada from the airport to the manor. And it landed on the front lawn. Prabhupada didn't like it, actually. It's the only time he flew in a helicopter. But anyway, went to his quarters, and there was no furniture in the manor then. And in May, in the UK, even in May, it's pretty cold. Periodically you might get a nice day, sunny day, but usually it's still, rainy, grey, foggy. Prabhupada didn't like English weather. Once a devotee asked Prabhupada, does Krishna speak Bhagavad Gita in hell? It was in a lecture in the manor. And Prabhupada said, this London is hell. Although in the summertime, when the weather was nice, then he liked it very much. He said it's like a heavenly place, very green, pleasant, not too hot. Anyway, no heating, no furniture. So Prabhupada was living in his room. I remember going in there, just a mat on the floor. He was having Shrudakirti was massaging him. So he could live very simply. Later at Bhubaneswar, cornerstone laying in Lord Nityananda's day, February 77, and Govinda Maharaj, he had built just a couple simple huts. We used to stay there on a library party. We go up and down that coast, so on the way to south, we would stop there. And Prabhupada liked that, live in that when he lived in his, take a bucket bath like that. He really liked it, a simple thing. But anyway, for preaching, he He traveled all over the world. Interesting thing, someone asked Prabhupada once that your spiritual master was a very powerful acharya, but he didn't travel all over the world and spread Krishna consciousness. And how come you could do it and he couldn't? What was the difference? And Prabhupada said, aeroplanes. That was his answer, aeroplanes. This is a facility, whatever, just as Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they used the printing press for spreading Krishna consciousness, as we know, the Brihat Madanga. So, in the same way, Prabhupada, he used also the printing press and beautiful books of very high standard, as was the desire of his Gurudev. As he expressed to him at Radhakund, but my desire was to print books. He said, Agun Jalbi, there'll be fire in Damat, that there was quarrel among the senior devotees. Better take the marble, sell it, and print books. And he told Prabhupada, if you ever get money, print books. As a constant meditation of Srila Prabhupada, and he was up in the night, getting up in the midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, translating books. Very focused in fulfilling that desire of his spiritual master, and he saw it as the basis for the preaching of Krishna consciousness. So later the devotee, Prabhupada only stayed a few days in the manor that time, but he came back in July for Rath Yatra. It was on 8th of July. He came on the 7th of July evening, and already his rooms were very nicely fixed up, like palatial quarters.
1977.
No, this is 73. This is just when he got the manor, just after, in May he came, then he came in July again. And those rooms were really nice, big darshan room, and nice bathroom, and nice sleeping room, and balcony, and nice view over the front lawn. It's like a very heavenly arrangement, and Prabhupada used it to the full extent. Shamsundar would invite so many big personalities to meet Prabhupada, and there are recordings of all those conversations. You can listen. Sir Arnold Toynbee, who was a famous historian, Lord Brockway, who was a member of the House of Lords, and then Donovan. That time he was like the English Bob Dylan, a very famous singer of the time, and Graham Hill, who was a world champion Formula One driver, and many other famous personalities. So Prabhupada used the opportunity to inject Krishna consciousness wherever possible. He was always preaching Krishna consciousness. So anyhow, that is a great accomplishment to get the Bhaktivedanta manor. And then the devotees worked all summer and fixed it up. And on Janmashtami, Prabhupada installed the deities of Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda, and he was present for his Vyasa Puja. And I recall him saying that, no, I can see what the time is. It's a clock up there. He said, I want all my disciples to become guru. It's not difficult, he said. And he quoted the verse, Jari Deko Tare Kaha Krishna Upadesh Amaraiga Guru Hang Tara Edesh. Whoever you meet, tell him about Krishna. In this way you become guru. and deliver the whole world. So this was Prabhupada's desire, that his disciples, grand disciples, should become gurus and cooperatively spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Okay. Thank you very much for what you're doing here.
Like to share some of your memories in Bengal or Mayapur or Calcutta.
Next time I come. It's take too long. We have to catch a flight, especially he hasn't been able to check in. So, please excuse me. I'll try to come again and, share some other memories. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nittai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Prabha, Vishnu, Prabhu ki jai.
Our Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj, he also joined there in a Bhaktivedanta manner. Yes.